The rain didn't just fall that day. It pressed down, heavy and relentless, like the sky itself had given up holding its grief. She didn't notice when the small backpack slipped from her trembling hands, or maybe she did and simply didn't have the strength left to care. It hit the wet pavement with a dull, quiet thud, almost swallowed by the sound of rain tapping against metal roofs and puddles. The zipper shifted slightly open on impact, just enough for something soft and brown to peek through. A tiny teddy bear, worn at the edges as if it had been held too tightly for too long. A few feet away, a biker stepped forward, and then he froze. Before we go any further, I want you to pause for a second. If you believe that kindness still exists in this world, that even broken people can still choose to do something good, then take a moment to like, comment, and subscribe to FableBox. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from right now? Because stories like this, they connect us, no matter where we are. The woman sat on the edge of the sidewalk, soaked to the bone. Her red uniform clung to her like a second skin. Rainwater mixed with tears on her face, and if you looked closely, you could tell the difference. Tears carried something heavier, something deeper, something that didn't belong to the sky. Her shoulders shook, not dramatically, not loudly, just enough to show that whatever she was holding inside was slowly breaking her apart. Behind her, the diner's neon sign flickered weakly through the rain. It felt like a place that had seen too many stories, too many endings that didn't quite feel right. I've always believed places like that absorb pain. Like walls remember the people who leaned on them when they couldn't stand on their own anymore. And she looked like someone who had reached that exact point. The biker wasn't supposed to stop. You could tell just by looking at him. Leather vest, worn boots, the kind of face that life had carved its own story into. Men like that usually pass through. They don't linger. They don't get involved. But something about that moment pulled him in. Maybe it was the way she didn't react when the bag dropped. Maybe it was the silence between her sobs. Or maybe it was something deeper, something unexplainable. He stepped closer, boots splashing softly against the wet pavement, and bent down to pick up the bag. And that's when everything changed. Because the moment his hand touched it, the zipper shifted a little more, and the small teddy bear slipped halfway out. He saw it. And then, he stopped moving, completely. I don't know if you've ever seen a grown man freeze like that. It's not fear, it's not confusion. It's something else, something heavier. It's the kind of stillness that comes when the past suddenly reaches out and grabs you by the throat. He didn't blink, didn't breathe, just stared at that tiny, soaked teddy bear, like it had whispered something only he could hear. And in that moment, the rain didn't matter. The world didn't matter. Only that small, fragile object and whatever it represented. The woman didn't notice him at first. She kept staring at the ground, her eyes unfocused, like she wasn't really seeing anything anymore, like she had already left the moment, mentally, emotionally. I've seen that look before. It's the look of someone who has lost more than they can explain, someone who has tried to stay strong for too long and finally reached the point where strength just isn't enough anymore. There's something about human pain that makes people either step forward or step away. Most people step away, not because they're bad, but because they're afraid. Afraid of saying the wrong thing, afraid of getting involved, afraid of carrying someone else's weight when they're already struggling with their own. But sometimes, someone stays, and that choice, it changes everything. The biker slowly crouched down, still holding the bag. His movements were careful, almost hesitant. His eyes hadn't left the teddy bear. It looked old, Not dirty in the careless way, but worn with love. One ear slightly flattened, stitching a little loose along the side, like it had been repaired before. This wasn't just a toy. This was a memory, a comfort, a piece of someone's world. And I don't know why, but I felt it right then, even just imagining the scene. That bear wasn't hers. It belonged to someone else. Someone small. Someone important. The biker's jaw tightened slightly, and for a split second, something flickered across his face. Something raw. Something unguarded. Regret. The kind that doesn't fade with time. The kind that stays. Finally, the woman noticed movement beside her. She turned her head slightly, her eyes red, swollen, unfocused, and for a brief moment confusion crossed her face, like she had forgotten where she was, or maybe who she was. Her gaze dropped to the bag in his hands, and then to the teddy bear, and something inside her broke all over again. Her lips parted slightly, but no words came out, just a soft, shaky breath that sounded like it hurt to exist. The biker didn't speak. He just held the bag out toward her. But he didn't let go. Not yet. Because something in his expression had changed. It wasn't curiosity anymore. It was recognition. And I can't explain this logically, but I've always believed that sometimes strangers recognize pieces of themselves in each other, not through words, not through stories, but through pain. And that's exactly what this felt like. Two lives, two completely different paths, connected by something neither of them expected. The rain kept falling, steady and cold, like the world didn't care about the moment unfolding beneath it. Cars passed in the distance. The diner door opened and closed. Life moved on. But right there, on that small stretch of wet pavement, something had paused. The woman finally reached for the bag, her fingers trembling as they brushed against his. And for just a second, he flinched. Not violently, just enough to show that contact meant something. He slowly let go, but his eyes stayed on her, watching, waiting, as if he already knew the story and was afraid of hearing it out loud. She pulled the bag close to her chest, clutching it tightly, almost protectively. Her fingers found the teddy bear and held on to it like it was the only thing keeping her grounded. And that's when the tears came harder. Not quiet anymore, not controlled, but real, raw, unstoppable. I've always thought that people don't cry because they're weak. They cry because they've been strong for too long. And in that moment, she looked like someone who had carried more than anyone ever should. The biker exhaled slowly, running a hand over his face, the rain mixing with whatever emotion he was trying to hide. He looked away for a moment, then back at her. And for the first time, he spoke. Not loudly, not forcefully, but with a weight that suggested he understood more than he should. She didn't respond right away, just shook her head slightly, as if trying to push something away. But you can't push away pain like that. It doesn't leave. It waits. And then it comes back stronger. I don't know what it is about moments like this, but they make me think about how close people are to breaking, without anyone ever realizing it. How many times we pass by someone who is silently falling apart and never stop. And I'll be honest, most days I probably wouldn't stop either. That's the uncomfortable truth. But stories like this remind me that maybe we should. Maybe we need to. Because sometimes, all it takes is one person choosing to stay. The biker shifted slightly, glancing once more at the teddy bear. And whatever memory it had triggered in him, it hadn't let go, not even close. If anything, it was pulling him deeper, back into something he had tried to forget, something unfinished, something painful. And I could feel it building, the weight of two stories about to collide, each carrying its own scars. The rain didn't slow, the world didn't pause, but something inside both of them had already changed, and neither of them knew yet. That this moment, the dropped bag, the small teddy bear, the freezing hesitation, was about to lead them somewhere neither of them expected. And maybe, somewhere they both needed. The rain kept falling, but something in the air had shifted. Not outside, no, the world was still moving the same way it always does, indifferent and loud and unforgiving. But between them, there was a quiet tension now, like two storms recognizing each other in the distance. She clutched the backpack tighter, her fingers wrapped around that small teddy bear, as if letting go would mean losing something far greater than just fabric and thread. And he couldn't stop looking at it. I've always believed that certain objects carry stories, not just memories, but pieces of people. And sometimes, those pieces are so powerful, they pull buried pain back to the surface, whether we're ready or not. That's exactly what was happening to him. You could see it in the way his jaw tightened again, the way his breathing became uneven, the way his eyes, hardened by years of life, suddenly looked tired. Not physically, emotionally. The kind of tired that comes from carrying regret for too long. She finally managed to speak, her voice barely audible under the rain, her words fragile, like they might shatter if she said them too loudly. She didn't tell a full story, not at first, just fragments. A hospital, a long night, a promise she couldn't keep, and that teddy bear. It wasn't hers, it belonged to her son. I felt something sink in my chest when I realized that, because suddenly, everything made sense. The way she held it, the way she broke when she saw it, the way she looked like someone who had lost not just hope, but purpose. She had been working double shifts at that diner, trying to keep things together, trying to fight something bigger than her. But sometimes, life doesn't fight fair. Sometimes it takes the one thing you would give anything to protect and leaves you behind with nothing but memories. The biker didn't interrupt her, didn't offer empty words, didn't try to fix anything. He just listened. And honestly, I think that's something we don't do enough anymore. We rush to respond, to advise, to speak, but sometimes the most powerful thing you can give someone is your silence, your presence. Because pain doesn't always need answers. Sometimes it just needs to be seen. She kept talking in broken pieces, her voice cracking, her words losing shape as the emotions took over again. She told him how her son used to carry that teddy bear everywhere, how he refused to sleep without it, how even on his worst days, he would hold it close, like it made everything okay. And then one day, it didn't. There was no dramatic explanation, no detailed ending, just a quiet, devastating truth that hung in the air between them. He was gone. And just like that, her entire world had collapsed into something unrecognizable. The biker closed his eyes for a moment, and when he opened them again, something inside him had changed. Because now, it wasn't just her pain in that moment, it was his too. I didn't expect what came next, and I don't think she did either. He slowly sat down beside her, right there on the wet pavement, not caring about the rain soaking through his clothes, not caring about how it looked. And for a while, he said nothing. Just sat there, two strangers, connected by loss, connected by something deeper than either of them could explain. Then, slowly, he reached into his jacket. His hand trembled slightly, not out of fear, but out of something heavier, something more personal. He pulled out a small, folded photograph. It was worn, edges bent, faded from time. and he held it in his hand for a second, like he wasn't sure if he was ready to let someone else see it. But then, he did. He handed it to her, and she looked at it. A young boy, smiling, holding a teddy bear. My heart sank, because sometimes life doesn't just mirror pain, it echoes it. He didn't need to explain much, not in detail, but enough. Enough for her to understand. Years ago, he had a son too, a life that looked completely different from the one he lived now. But bad decisions, distance, time, they took things apart, piece by piece, until one day, there was nothing left to hold on to. No second chances, no goodbye, just silence and regret. The kind of regret that follows you everywhere, the kind that doesn't let you sleep, changes who you are. I think in that moment, they both realized something powerful, that pain may look different on the outside, but at its core, it feels the same. Loss is loss, and it leaves marks you can't always see. The rain started to ease slightly, softening into something quieter, like the world itself was finally taking a breath. She looked at him differently now, not as a stranger, but as someone who understood. And I think that changed everything. Because when you feel understood, even a little, the weight doesn't disappear, but it becomes bearable. He nodded slightly, almost to himself, then looked at her with a kind of quiet determination. Not dramatic, not loud, but real. And in that moment, he made a choice. Not to walk away, not to forget, but to do something, anything. Because sometimes we can't fix the past, but we can decide who we are moving forward. And I truly believe that's where real change begins. He helped her up slowly, steadying her as she struggled to stand, her legs weak, her body exhausted from carrying more than it should. He didn't let go too quickly, made sure she was steady, grounded, safe. And then he did something small, but powerful. He walked her back inside the diner, not as a hero, not as someone trying to save her, but simply as someone who refused to let her face the world alone in that moment. And I'll be honest, that part stayed with me the most, because grand gestures are rare, but small acts of kindness, those are the things that actually change lives. Days later, things weren't magically fixed. That's not how life works. She still had pain, still had loss, still had moments where everything felt too heavy. But something had shifted. She wasn't alone anymore. He came back, not once, not out of obligation, but because he wanted to. Sometimes just to sit, sometimes just to check on her, sometimes just to make sure she was still holding on. And slowly, very slowly, she started to heal. Not completely, not perfectly, but enough to keep going. And him? I think he found something too. Not redemption, not forgiveness, but purpose. A second chance, not to change what happened, but to become someone better than he was before. And maybe that's enough. Before I end this story, I want to ask you something personal. If this touched your heart in any way, take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to FableBox. Because stories like this remind us that even in the darkest moments, there's still light. Sometimes in the most unexpected places. And I have a special request for you. In the comments, write one word, hope. Or share your own story, a moment where someone showed you kindness when you needed it the most. Because those moments matter, more than we realize. The truth is, we don't always get to choose what happens to us, but we do get to choose what we do next. We get to choose whether we walk away or stay, whether we ignore someone's pain or acknowledge it, whether we close ourselves off or open up, even just a little. And sometimes, that one choice, that one moment, that one act of kindness can change everything. The rain eventually stopped that day. The streets dried. Life moved on. But somewhere, in a small diner, in a quiet corner of the world, two broken people reminded each other that even after loss, even after regret, even after everything falls apart, there is still something worth holding on to. And maybe, just maybe, that something is each other.